Who are you texting?
My therapist.
You text with your therapist?
Text, video chat, call. Yep.
That sounds too easy. How did you find her?
I just went to betterhelp.com/save. She's a licensed therapist and it's all online. I connect when it's convenient for me and don't waste time driving anywhere. Plus, it's affordable.
I wonder if I should try it.
It's great to talk to someone in confidence. She's helped me sort out quite a few things. And right now you save 10% off the first month when you go through betterhelp.com/save.
Betterhelp.com/save. Got it.
Introducing touch-free payments from PayPal, a safe way for your customers to pay. Whether you're a market seller,
I'll take 2 tomatoes and a cucumber,
poodle pamperer, piano tuner, or plumber, signing up to accept touch-free payments for your business is easy. Simply download the PayPal app and display your own unique QR code for your customers to scan. Touch-free QR code payments. No seller fees until 2021. Not applicable to PayPal here transactions. Other fees may apply. Shop safe with PayPal.
Hi there, you're through again to that Millwall podcast, and this is another edition of Who Are You? We're lucky enough this week to have a special guest. Most of you know him off from online and Twitter, and he's written, I think, 3 now, coming on to 4 Millwall-based books. Knows a lot about the old teams and whatnot, and a lot of you definitely know. And we are pleased to welcome Merv Payne. Good afternoon, Mervyn.
Hi, Mickey.
How you doing? You all right?
Actually, not too bad.
The process of this is that we go through 20 questions. We learn a bit about you, a bit about your Millwall history, why you got into Millwall, and the questions should really just flow through. Obviously, the first question is really easy. Your name is obviously, we've just said that. But, I mean, what's your Twitter account? What's your handle on Twitter? Or how can people get hold of you, obviously, depending, obviously, how you know about this for your book?
Yeah, I'm at Merv Payne on Twitter. Yeah, that's it. So they can get me on there.
I miss you. Yeah, you're very opinion.
Sorry. Yeah.
I think Twitter's taken a dark side over the last year or two. It just seems to have, depending on your opinion, within your set closeness is okay. But sometimes when someone has a look in and sees something, then all of a sudden people jump on you, and it's, I don't know, you've got to take Twitter as a made-up place. It's not real.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I've learned when to sort of, I've learned the hard way when not to bother arguing with anyone, or when to just put my phone away and or ignore stuff. But it's still very hard. You see someone say something, and then and you can't help biting back, and then you realise then you've just been reeled in. So yeah, it's tricky. But yeah, you have to learn when to pick your battles. Really, and there's certain things I just don't even bother discussing. It's not even worth even starting on, because you don't get anywhere.
No, it's easier just to think about it to yourself and not think, or DM someone you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Have you seen what these guys do? So yeah. We do have swearing. You're allowed to swear on here if you want to swear. That's up to you. So we start with question 2. Obviously, we know where your name is and all that. How the hell did you come to start supporting Millwall?
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward. I was brought up in Balham. My mum and all her side, all her family were all Chelsea fans. My dad and all his family were Millwall fans. He was from Camberwell and Peckham, and when he married my mum, they sort of bought a place roughly in the middle. And basically, when I was 7, I was doing my mum's heading in the house, and my dad announced he was going down to Millwall. He stopped going for a little while after the Ipswich trouble. He sort of knocked on the head for a bit because it was a bit depressing, and all the various problems down there. Decided he was going to go again, and he took me along, and that was it. That was September '79, and that was it. I was hooked from there, really. Yeah.
September '79. I was 4.
Yeah, right. No, I was 7 when I went. Yeah, I was just barely 7. So, but yeah, I remember it really well, and it was unlike anything I'd ever seen, really. I mean, we used to go. You'd take me to the banger racing at Wimbledon, that sort of thing, and go fishing, which bored me shitless, to be honest. Couldn't stand fishing, but that was it. Once he took me to Millwall, I was absolutely hooked on Millwall obviously, but football as well. Football in general, I just became just mad on it straight away.
You've been missing the football?
Oh God, yeah, definitely. I still wake up on Saturday morning and you still feel a bit excited because it's Saturday. Then you remember then that it's off indefinitely, and you still keep checking your phone in the midweek to see what midweek games are on. But yeah, the sad thing is we're starting to actually get used to not having any football now, which is it's quite depressing really. But with no idea of when it's coming back as well. At least in the close season, you can count the days down to the first game, but we've not even got that at the moment, which is pretty grim.
No,
that's it. Obviously, a lot of work's going on. Yeah.
Hopefully soon it'll come back. So, what was your first Millwall game, and obviously, what was your memory or impression of that first game?
So my first game, we played Carlisle at home in a third division game. It finished 1-0. Kevin O'Callaghan scored. He was a bit of a star of the team at the time. He was only 17, but he was obviously destined for better things. I think there was about 5,000 at the Den that day, and just my dad was being a bit cautious. He took me in the seats, the old grandstand at the old Den, the old situation, lifting you over the turnstile so you had to pay for me, sort of thing. Yeah. But yeah, and for me, the memory was when the goal went in, the noise was unbelievable, even though there was only like 5,000 there, and that was what really got me hooked, because that you sort of crave that noise again. So yeah, that was it. It finished 1-0. Still got the programme now. 2 weeks later, we went again. We played Exeter at home, and my dad was a bit braver. He took me on the terraces, went on the cold blow lane end where he always liked to stand, and we were 5-0 up at half time. It was a cracker, I remember distinctly at half time a bloke walked past us on his way to the bar or to get a pie or whatever. And he said, "Oh, we'll get another 5 in the second half." And I actually thought they would, because I thought they got 5, by half time. It'll finish 10. Anyway, it finished 5-1, and there was some booze at the end because they had only won 5-1. But I soon learned that was sort of typical of the hypercritical Mill supporters. But it was another side to it to like, really. Yeah.
I mean, the obviously with your first games and whatnot, it touched you so much, obviously, with having a connection with your dad, that you ended up writing your first book about it. I mean, how did the first book come about, and how did it suddenly go into flame? Because, I mean, I saw it through the Sabotage Times. That's where it first got some oxygen. So, I mean, it was with my dad, he was quite old school. He'd get up, go to work, come home, have his dinner, sit down, watch the telly, go to bed, and that was it. And weekend he'd be busy doing stuff. So that was the only sort of thing I sort of really shared with him, to be honest. And other than that, we didn't have much sort of connection. He didn't mostly play football. We didn't really bother coming and watch me much because it just wasn't his thing. So the one thing we had was that, obviously, following football and Millwall and that. And he had this obsession with Millwall getting in the first division, or the top of the Premier League, what you want to call it. It was the first division in them days. And he always told me this story about 72, when they missed out by like a point from Birmingham, finished third. And he was convinced that was their big chance gone. He said, "Oh, they will never be in the first division in my lifetime." And so it became a bit of a holy grail for me to sort of make sure I saw Millwall in the first division with my dad. And obviously it happened in 87, 88. And then, obviously, fast forward a few years, he passed away in 2007, and I was sitting down. Sounds a bit morbid, but it's not that. I mean, I was sitting down writing what I was going to sort of say at the funeral service, and it went on a bit long. I was typing out. It went on for about 3 pages, and it obviously wasn't realistic to use at a church service. And it became sort of a tribute to him, which I posted on House of Fun, which I used to be on quite a lot of the time, the old House of Fun forum. And I just stuck it on there because I've been on there for years, and I knew quite a few of the regulars on there. We used to meet up at matches, people like Paul Neve and people like that. So it was my way of sort of letting them know what had happened and sort of a tribute to him. And I forgot about it, really. Then about a week, 2 weeks later, someone phoned me and said, "Oh, that story about your dad's all over the internet." And that was it. And at the time, I was working at the Sunday Sport newspaper. And we had a consult. Yeah, I worked there for years. It's great.
And it's not quite as interesting as it sounds, but it was good. It was an interesting place to work. But I worked there for a good few years. We had a chap come in on a consultancy basis, a fellow called James Brown, who was the creator of Loaded magazine.
Yeah.
So they were trying to shift the paper from newspaper to sort of lads mag sort of thing. Didn't really work. But he was sat opposite me, and I'd seen him quite a lot on telly. He was on a lot of these 100 best goals or sort of, these talking head things where they get the celeb's opinion, and he was always on there. And I got chatting to him because he sat opposite me in the office and was always chatting about football. He's a big Leeds fan, and I don't know how it came about, but he saw the piece, and at the time he was setting up Sabotage Time because he wanted an online magazine. And he said, "Would you mind if we use that as one of our first pieces?" And I said, "Well, yeah, go for it." And that's when it really became. What was nice about that was obviously fans of other clubs saw it, and there was a comment section on it at the time, and there was fans of all clubs saying, "I can really relate to it," and that's just like the story of how me and my dad, we're Everton fans, we're Liverpool fans, we're Wigan fans, and it was nice for that sort of reason. And James kept saying to me, you should turn it into a book. It's a good story, and I'd never really thought about it, and I tried a few times, and it never really worked. And then I sort of forgot about it, really. And then a few years ago, I was keen on the idea. Still, always wanted to write a book, but never really got around to it. And it was like 30 years since the promotion to the First Division. And I thought, well, I'll do a little sort of story about that. And I started writing. And as I was writing that, stuff from the story about me and my dad was sort of like was woven into it, really, if you like. And it's like it ended up becoming the story of me and my dad again. And that's what, because my dad was really, it was based around that desperation to see Millwall get in the First Division for the first time. And yeah, in the end, it actually happened quite quickly. I did have a publisher interested in it a little bit, but that sort of tailed off. So I just published it myself at the end of 2018, and it sort of went from there. And yeah, I sort of, because the response was quite nice, I thought, well, I'll do some more, because there's plenty more, I think, to be written about Millwall, really. There's a lot of what's gone on, and that's where the second one come from, and so on. And it's sort of snowballed from there, really.
I mean, I think as you said, I think the book has hit a lot of people. People really can connect with it. It home with a lot of people, and that's across the whole of football. Because I've seen some of the comments too, and obviously when we done AMS, you kindly allowed us to put it on the website.
That's right.
Both parts of it, and the comments and people who, oh, that's where I went, or they changed it from the dad to the granddad, or an
uncle.
All exactly.
Definitely, yeah.
And you just think, it must be just one of those working class. It was the only way back then. Dads were a different breed. It was a different generation. They were real men, especially in Dockers, etc. It was, and it was, I suppose, an only way of having a connection for that hour and a half, 2 hours.
Absolutely, yeah.
On a weekday to get very close to your dad. So your dad got to see you in the FA Cup final as well.
Sorry?
Your dad got to see Millwall in the FA Cup final as well.
Yeah, which again was, I know, which was a good one. So it was like the two things we sort of thought would never, especially when I started following in the early 80s, it was pretty tough times down there. We were getting up 2,000-3,000 down there, struggling to stay clear of the fourth division. So the thought of getting into the First Division and Cup finals and getting to Wembley was just unheard of. So yeah, to do both. I mean, I can't imagine there's many fans out of the whole football league that may ever get to sort of see their team in the top flight and in a cup final with the dad or the granddad or whatever, or the person that took them. So yeah, it's nice to think we've sort of achieved that. Yeah.
So I mean, moving on through the questions, and when we come back to the stories, hopefully we'll go through. But where did you normally sit then? Obviously, CBL halfway, the seats are Alderton Road. Where was your normal seats, and then obviously special? First
of all, my dad always liked standing on the cold blow, quite far up, and obviously because I was little, we couldn't do that. So we'd stand off at the cold blow. Funny thing, this reminds me of a few months back. Someone on Twitter, a Millwall fan on Twitter, I can't remember the guy's name. I think it might be. I think his Twitter handle was Hobbsio, I think.
Oh yeah.
I think he posted a photo of when he was mascot. I don't know if you remember this.
I remember.
He was mascot for a Millwall game, and it was like, I think, January 1984, Hull at home, and it was sort of taken from like the main stand at Millwall, looking towards the corner of the cold blow on the halfway, and he's stood there. And the picture was sort of cropped, and I messaged him. I said, "Oh, if you could have moved up a bit, you'd you'd have seen me and my dad, because that's where we always stood at a certain place. And he posted a full picture, and there sure enough was me stood talking to my dad behind him, because we always stood at exactly the same place. I think it was the sort of the yellow bar level with the floodlight base thing, the white. Remember the old white floodlight base with the lions on? We always stood level with them, because a mate of mine used to go on the halfway line, and he'd come down, and we'd meet at the bottom before the match, where the fences joined, and have a chat. So we'd always stand there, so I sort of saw when he turned up. And yeah, I mean, I recognised my dad in his trademark long black coat, and me and my old Parker. And it was quite weird sort of seeing that. And as I sort of got a bit bigger, we moved back in the cold blow. But for some reason, I always fancied the halfway line. I thought it was a better view of sort of both halves of the game. So I think about 1985, when we went up with George Graham, the second half of that season, I persuaded him to move around there. And from then on, that was it. And again, we sort of moved further to the back when there was a big group of us used to go. And we ended up, being towards the back of the halfway.
Well, it's nice to have a photo of your dad at football, because especially back then, you wouldn't have took the photo yourself.
No, exactly. Yeah, there's no selfies or anything like that. So yeah, you just wouldn't have thought of taking it. You know, it was just such a standard thing to do. You just go to the match. You know, so yeah, it's nice to have a photo of that. It was really good.
And Hobson's got a lot of pictures. He's got an awful lot of pictures. He seems to. Yeah. So the new den, and obviously your dad got to see the new den too. I mean, what's your thoughts on the new den? Is it a den, or will it never ever be, the den? It's just the new den.
Yeah, it's never going to be anything like the old den. But I suppose those sort of days have gone, unfortunately. But we've certainly made it a good home, I think. I mean, it's getting on for 30 years now. But there's a lot of other new sort of grounds who are far more soulless than the den. And I've always said it's the fans that make the ground rather than the ground. And obviously certain grounds, the way they're laid out, don't make the atmosphere any better or sort of detract from the atmosphere. And I think a lot of people felt there perhaps should have been at least one big, instead of it being separated into two tiers, there should have been at least one big tier behind the goal, for example. But I mean, you've only got to think about some of the games we've had down there, like the Huddersfield playoff semi-final. The atmosphere, some of those. That's what you just have to make. I think it just takes a little bit more work at a ground like the Den or modern stadiums to get that atmosphere. But I think Millwall fans will create it wherever you put them. Yeah, no, I mean the Huddersfield was one. I mean, I've been in a few big games in the stadium and on pitch side, and I don't think any other team can basically create the noise Millwall fans can create. The smaller the number seems to be, the louder they are. Absolutely. Yeah. And that bug, once you get that Millwall bug, it's strange. Once you get it, you just don't seem to get rid of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Your best ever. What's your favourite all-time player? Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's obviously there's the obvious ones like Sheringham and Harris and that sort of thing. For me, this was something that. It sort of occurred to me when I was interviewing him for the book, the Ordinary Boys book, and I managed to interview Kevin O'Callaghan. Yeah. And I'd interviewed loads of players, loads of ex-players, and I mean, I did a bit of interviewing when I was at the sport, on the sort of sports side for the magazine, stuff like that. And it never fazed me really, but it was weird interviewing Kevin O'Callaghan, given that he was the bloke that scored the first goal when I went down there, and also scored the penalty that got us into the first division. It was quite a surreal sort of experience, really. I mean, I was a bit like a 13-year-old girl bumping into Harry Styles in Nando's sort of thing. I mean, it was actually quite, it was strange, and he's quite a sort of cool, laid-back sort of character. And it was nice because he sort of struggled to remember a lot of the things from the FA Youth Cup winning team, obviously. But once he started jogging his memory, he was quite enthusiastic about it, and that was really good. So yeah, I think purely for that point, because obviously that first game, he scores that goal and there's that roar, and my first question is, who is it? Who was that? My dad told me it's Kevin O'Callaghan, and he sort of tells me all about him and the sort of reputation he had at the time, and he went on to become like the most expensive teenager at the time, and it sort of stuck. And then from to score that penalty at Hull to get us in the first division, to come back to the club, and sort of finish off what perhaps the class of '79 should have taken them to was a bit special. So I think he has to be, for me, just that sort of special player, really.
And they do, the players from that era just don't seem to have really any airs and graces as such. I mean, I've done a special with John Sitton, and myself and you with what's yet to come out. Yeah, it's coming out shortly with Nicky Jackson. And they are just genuinely nice blokes who don't really think they've done anything special.
No, there was probably jobs they could have got that would have paid more back then in the late 70s, you know. But that was what it was. So I think I made the point in the book. It was they played football purely out of love. You know, they loved the game and they would have done anything for the game. And they fell in love with Millwall as well when Bob Pearson sort of took them down there. And that was especially, I mean, the Scottish guy Alan McKenna. He, you know, some of the things he said was really quite moving, really, about how passionate he was for the game, and he said you felt that from the fans as well. And you know, that's what it was. And I asked all of them, I think I mentioned this before, but I asked all of them when I was interviewing them for Ordinary Boys about, you know, did they feel bitter or resentful about the players in this day and age who can earn an absolute fortune doing what they did? And none of them did. You know, they all said if they could change things, that's. They all said they wouldn't change it. They wouldn't do anything different. They'd rather be in that Millwall team of '79 than be one of these, you know, the modern day apprentices who don't have to clean boots, don't have to sweep the terraces down, and get paid tons of money right from the off.
It's quite weird when we obviously it was a couple of weeks ago now. I'm still doing the final edit on it. Because it was a bit low quality, so we've got to build it up a bit. But I was quite amazed that Teddy Sheringham was Nicky Chatterton's boot boy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
He kept that right to the end as well. You're like, oh. He probably wouldn't have been fazed by that. I mean, one of the funny comments from Kevin O'Callaghan was that, you know, he said he hated that aspect of it because he was quite a self-assured guy. He knew he was a good footballer, and he said he was Barry Kitchener's apprentice, which is a big ask at Millwall, as you can imagine. Yeah. And he said one day, Kitch pulled me to one side and said, "You're the worst apprentice I've ever had." Sort of joking about, you know, he said, "Well, I didn't care, so I didn't want to clean boots, I wanted to play football." And I think that sort of side of him, that, you know, he had a bit of swagger about, and that showed in his play. And I think that's why he was one of the few to go on and carve out a really good career. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I learned around that time, I did a little bit of research at the Palace as well, because they were in a similar situation to me. They had a really good youth team. And Malcolm Allison started that there. And he actually stopped the whole apprentice thing. He stopped them cleaning boots and working. And he actually, he got someone else to do it. And he felt that, so he was a sort of, if you like, probably one of the ones that started off this whole culture where young footballers starting out didn't do the sort of menial task. And I wonder if perhaps that was a good thing or not. But yeah, it didn't faze them at all. They even enjoyed that. They all said they enjoyed that aspect of it, you know, cleaning the pros' boots and tidying up and staying behind afterwards and doing little chores. It didn't bother them at all. A friend of mine used to play for Southampton, a fellow I worked with many years ago, and he was the apprentice to Matt Le Tissier.
Oh right, yeah.
Matt Le Tissier's boots, and he was a trainee goalkeeper. But he said literally at the end of every training session, Matt Le Tissier used to hang on for half an hour every day, and either take penalties or free kicks in him, and literally just sit there and do that. So every day he'd do that, and he said, it helped him, and he didn't make it for whatever reason. But it's just one of those little stories with the pros that you think. Actually, that probably went a long way to helping someone out. Rather than, I can't see some of these stars now doing that.
No, and I think someone like Le Tissier, again, he's someone who just loves the game. Saw the way he played. He never seemed bothered about getting a big move. He probably easily could have got a big move somewhere, but his attitude, I think, was he was happy with his football there and didn't want to risk. And even now, as a pundit, he's that similar sort of personality, isn't he?
Yeah, no, definitely. Mm-hmm. So. Question 7, favourite all-time manager?
Yeah, I went for George Graham on that. It might be a bit controversial. We've had, obviously, Doherty. What Doherty did was amazing. But for me at the time, when George Graham came in, I was about 10, and I was really getting into Millwall then. And started following the tables and stuff like that, and really properly following them. And it was an awful season. We'd started with Peter Anderson, spending a lot of money, well, by Millwall standards at the time, sort of virtually promising promotion, and we were just diabolical, really, really bad, getting some absolute really bad results, real taterings and stuff. And then I remember my dad telling me they got George Graham, and it didn't mean I'd heard of him, but I remember my dad being really pleased. So it'll be really good. It was about sort of Christmas time, just after Christmas, and I think they actually got worse soon after he took over. They were getting beaten even more, but he sort of gradually pulled them up. And they were dead and buried when he arrived, and they were as good as in the 4th division, which at the time it was a pretty horrible prospect. And the transformation was just ridiculous. He put a load of the old players, because Anderson brought a lot of old players in. He put a lot of that. He just put them in the reserves. He brought his own players. He brought in, he brought in just people like Lukowski, Kuzak, just sort of what seemed like journeyman players from other teams. I think Southend were in the 4th division when he brought Lukowski and Kuzak in. And they were brilliant. He moulded such a good team, and they escaped relegation. That was probably one of my first really memorable games at the Den, was when we played Brentford last home game, when we had to win to have any chance of staying up, and we beat them 1-0. And again, the atmosphere that day was unbelievable. But Graham just had a way of getting good results and building a good team. You could sense it. And a few of the players I spoke to from sort of the class of '79 who ended up playing under him, a couple of them, said they didn't particularly like him as a bloke, but had nothing but respect for him as a coach. That he had that sort of aura when he walked into a room, everyone sort of shut up. And I think really it's a shame that the club was in a bit of a financial mess. I don't think he was very happy when he was pretty much forced to sell Fashanu to Wimbledon, and inevitably when Arsenal come knocking, there was only one thing he was going to do. But I think had it not been for the money troubles the club had at the time, I think he almost certainly would have got us into the 1st division without a doubt. But yeah, I think for me, probably because it was the first time I'd tasted the success of the Millwall fan, and he was the manager that brought it, really. So I think that's why he probably goes down. But obviously, Doherty is a very, very close second.
No, yeah, definitely. So on to what a lot of people seem to think this is quite a tricky question, but what's the worst Millwall player you've ever seen?
Yeah, I do. I always think best and worst is a nightmare, because you think about it and then you decide, and then half an hour later you think of someone else. But there's been some stinkers, but I think the worst, that's sort of fairly recent. I had to go for Gary Taylor Fletcher, and I felt a bit. I think he gets to quite a bad. You actually feel sorry for the player. If you go beyond disdain, beyond hatred, and you actually start to pity them, then I think that's when you know they're in a bad place. I think Gary Taylor Fletcher epitomised the Ian Holloway period, didn't he? Really, because you had a player who was a decent striker. He had a good pedigree. He scored goals in the top 5 divisions of English football. He scored goals in the Premier League for Blackpool, and he should really have been a sort of Steve Claridge sort of signing. He should have been one of these players. It's been, he's done it all. He scored goals at every level. It should have been easy for him, and just in what was so typical of the Ian Holloway era, it just went from bad to worse. And I say there was all sorts of jokes about him online and stuff about his physical appearance. But for me, that was just like at the time when I think it was quite close to when we were relegated anyway, and it was like the sort of the final nail in the coffin. And you thought that just for me, it epitomised a really miserable time in the club's history. There's been some bad players, but yeah, that one for me, I think has to be the top one.
So what's the worst away player you've ever seen play at the Den?
Yeah, that was a weird one, because a lot of players are affected by the atmosphere down there, aren't they? And I think they'll have stinkers purely based on the flack they're getting from the fans. Was it Chilwell, the Leicester fullback?
Who didn't want to speak from Ben? Is it Ben?
I think it was. Yeah, he was only a youngster at the time, wasn't he? And it was quite funny that the thought that they'd actually sort of influenced these. And then we've had players down there who've been stubbed because of the stick they've been getting. I don't think that necessarily. I mean, Paul Birch, who I think I'll come to later, was a classic example, but he was a very good player. But I had to choose someone who had a real stinker, but he actually played in our favour, and that's Christian Daly for West Ham.
There's a few.
Yeah, he had a nightmare, but obviously it was great for us because he just had a stinker, and I think he gave away a penalty, and he just had a nightmare. And the more obviously was one of them, the more he tried to dig himself out of it, the worse it got. And it was just
He was captain at the time as well, wasn't he?
I think he was, yeah. So it was the icing on the cake for a sort of memorable game, really. But yeah, I'm sure when I go away now, I'll think of 3 or 4 that are even worse than that. But that's what stands out.
So, your most memorable match involving Millwall?
Yeah, I'm going to be boring and say the whole game because I mean, there's obviously been a lot, but whole away, it was just perfect, really. Because I remember I was trying to persuade my dad to go with me. It was a bank holiday Monday, end of the season, but he wouldn't. He had a thing about going to away games. He didn't like travelling anyway, as it was, and he was really superstitious. And he knew all about Mill's history against various opposition, and his standard phrase, we never win there, we never beat them, and he's we never win at Hull, we won't. So he was he preferred to stay at home, sit by the radio, and if it all went pear-shaped, then he wouldn't have a 6-hour coach ride to endure. But there was no way I was going to miss that, and everything about it was just perfect. I think I went the Bricklayers Arms pub in the Elephant and Castle. I don't think it's there anymore, but they organised a coach, and I went with my cousin with that, and we left about 8 in the morning. And the atmosphere all the way was just brilliant. And it was obviously we scored quite early, Kevin O'Callaghan penalty, and we clung on. And yeah, the scenes afterwards on the terraces, the people on the pitch, in the car park afterwards, and the coach on the way home. It was just, I just don't imagine you'll ever beat that, really. I mean,
how old were you?
I was just short of my 16th birthday then. Yeah, a couple of weeks short of 16. So I was in my last year at school. At school, full of Palace fans. So we moved out to sort of South Norwood way by then. So we had all Palace fans to go back to the next day. And they were all hoping that we'd beat Blackburn the following Saturday so they could get in the playoffs. And of course, we lost 4-1 and kept them out of the playoffs, which was even better. So, yeah, it was a win all round, that for me.
Question 11, slightly similar, but not to a degree. What's your favourite ever Millwall game?
Favourite game, or was it favourite Millwall moment?
Oh, sorry, favourite ever Millwall moment. Sorry,
yeah.
Just trying to trick you on the questions you've already answered.
That's right, yeah. I printed them out. I got asked this a while back, and like I say, there's a lot of obvious ones like the final whistle at Hull and the final whistle at Old Trafford, the semi-final, stuff like that. But for me, it was definitely the FA Cup final. Obviously, was pretty special. But I remember as a kid watching my first ever cup final. Must have been about 7. So it was the same season that I went to my first game. I think the final was Arsenal West Ham 1980, and I was sort of quite taken aback by how the whole country came to a standstill. Back then, it was such a massive TV event. Yeah. The coverage would start at like 11:30 in the morning. I mean, they'd even cut like bloody Swap Shop and Tiswell short to start the cup final coverage. And the ITV and BBC would be competing to see who could do the best coverage. I mean, I read the commentator Brian Moore's autobiography a while ago, and I read it again recently. And he talked about how the competitiveness between ITV and BBC showing the same event. Yeah. And the stuff that they'd have celebrities come out when celebrity wasn't a big thing then. They'd have celebrities coming out saying they supported and all sorts of specials. And I was taken back by the whole, just the way what an event it was. Even my mum, who hates football, would sit down and watch it. And I remember the build up to it, and then the band come out on the pitch, and they struck up, and they started doing Abide With Me, which was obviously the traditional cup final hymn. And all the fans of both teams were singing it. And even then, at like age 7, it sort of made the hairs on the back of your neck stand on him because it was such an amazing sound. And I remember thinking, imagine being in that crowd, 100,000 people at Wembley, and you're singing, like this like giant bloody church, and you're singing just before your team plays in the biggest game in the world. I'm thinking, imagine what that would be like. And I used to discuss it with my dad. Imagine if that was Millwall, and he sort of said, it's never going to happen. So, of course, 2004, it wasn't Wembley, but it was Cardiff. And I'm stood there, and I've got my dad on one side and my son's on the other. And of course, it wasn't the same sort of band, but even so, Abide With Me started, and everyone sang along to it. And it was a real sort of lump in the throat moment, to think, I thought about all those cup finals that I've watched of all these teams who were like, big teams, and you thought at the time Millwall in the third division, you thought that's never going to be Millwall, and I thought for it to finally happen was so I think that has to be that moment, has to be the best one for me. I think, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The FA Cup back in the day was special. I mean, the helicopters following the coaches, and turn up at the ground or the hotel, and they used to, you might have a camera on the coach briefly before it left, and you never really had live footage what you got now.
Yeah, we take it for granted now because obviously camera phones and all that sort of thing. But the thing about, say again in the Brian, because Brian Moore, he was one of my favourite commentators. He was absolutely brilliant, and in his book he was talking about, say, that competition between ITV and BBC. He was ITV at the time, and they were trying to outdo each other. And they said they had a bit of a nerd working behind the scenes there who said, what if we could get a camera on the coach, for the team coach? And they said, we can't, that's ridiculous. You need where are you going to plug it in, all that sort of thing. So they put a generator, they took all the luggage out and put a generator in the luggage hold of the coach and powered the camera off of that so they could do live interviews on the team bus to one of the teams, and it sort of knocked the BBC out of the water. And that was, and you think how easy that is now to do, but back then it was like putting man on the moon then. But yeah, that's the sort of events they went to, to sort of make the coverage sort of super special.
So, question 12, your funniest ever Millwall moment?
Not such a moment, more of a...
Don't say the Cardiff game where the fella fell off the...
No, that's probably up there. But yeah, I touched on it earlier. Paul Birch, I think you mentioned Paul Birch to any Millwall fan of a certain age, and they'll remember the FA Cup fourth round replay, 1986, I think it was. And we got a draw up at Villa, and we brought them back to the Den, because a bit like that nowadays, we felt capable of beating anyone then. And Villa were a half-decent top-flight team then. Midweek game, I think we had a penalty. We had a penalty first half and we missed it. I think Les Briley took it and missed it. But anyway, Birch is playing on obviously, if you remember, he had bright blonde curly hair, and he's playing on the wing down the halfway line. And every time he comes near the ball, he gets wolf whistled. And it was getting to the point where the whole crowd were doing it. And I think it was Turner, Graham Turner, not Taylor. It was Turner was a Villa manager. And to try and give him a bit of relief, he put him on the other wing, and that didn't work. He was still getting it, and he eventually took him off. And like I say, he was a good player as well, Birch. I think he a very, very good player. And I think we ended up winning that night as well. So it was one of those sort of memorable FA Cup nights at the Den. And it became the stuff of legend. I think even that, I've spoken to Aston Villa fans who even remember it were there, and even they admitted it was pretty brutal, but also quite funny. But yeah, that for me always stands out as a funny moment.
There's a few funny moments sort of I've got on. I think Millwall fans as a whole are a very old-fashioned sense of humour group of fans, and they're instant. As soon as they see something, it'll be instant where the joke will come.
Oh God, yeah.
Look at the photos over the last 10 years where the copper gets handcuffs on the back of him on his belt.
Yeah, exactly.
The bench.
Yeah.
We've had the Sheffield Wednesday leg and other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
I think they're all very, very funny. So yeah.
This is it. I mean, I'll think of 10 more probably within the next hour. But that always sticks in my mind because it reminded me of when you was at school and you do the humming to piss the teacher off.
Yeah.
And everyone starts. I remember doing that a few times, and even it get to a point where every now and then it'd be so successful that even the sort of the class nerds, the swaps, would be doing it as well because it felt so powerful. You was part of something so bloody powerful, and that was what it was like that night. It was just, but yeah, I mean, what I always loved about going to Mills, even when it was bad, and up and down, it was really bad. If the football was crap, the fans used to amuse themselves, and some of the comments and stuff down there. The bloke we used to stand behind us in the halfway line. Never knew his name. We used to call him Ben Elton, but he'd rant and rave like Ben Elton at the time, and he'd like shouting stuff like "Pay attention, Millwall," that sort of. And he'd have you in stitches. I mean, you'd walk away laughing your head in tears of laughter, and they'd got beat like 2-0 or something like that. But you still had a laugh because there were so many characters down there. There's
still characters now. I mean, you can walk around.
Yeah, there is.
Write a book on some of what people have arguments with themselves, or they come back to their seat thinking they're an armchair manager telling them how it should be done and all that. So there's been I've witnessed some funny stuff down there. So
I just think it's a shame that the seats sort of took a bit of that spontaneity away because when people would sort of mill about a bit more and find their sort of favourite place, and you'd end up getting near the same characters. I don't know. It was all seemed a bit easier to when it was the terraces, I suppose. But that's just the way it is.
I'd love the terraces to come back, but I don't know.
Not gonna
The current Millwall stadium, because it was made in Austria, I don't know if it'd be ready. It'd need to have the corners built in, and then maybe make corners into a complete terrace area. But again, that's many years down the line. So, what's your best story about following Millwall then?
Again, it's quite an old one. The fellow I used to go to away games with, he was a bit older than me. He was one of the first ones to sort of be able to drive, and he would just drive anywhere. And in the promotion season, near the end, we played Leeds away, and I couldn't go. It was a midweek. I was still at school and stuff like that. I couldn't go, and he said, "Oh, I'm going." Sod it. And he had like his little old escort. And I think it was quite hard to get tickets as well because the police were trying to stop people from going. There was no train. There's all sorts of stories about putting Mill fans off. So when he drives up there on his own in his escort, parks up, finds a pub in the city centre, which is fairly busy, walks in as he does with his leather jacket and his Millwall shirt on, goes up to the bar, says to the barman, "I'll have a pint, please." And the barman says, "Probably best not being in here, mate." And he goes, "Oh, why not?" He goes, "Well, it's full of Leeds." And he went, "Is it?" And he apparently turns around, holds his hands up and goes, "Mill," because and the whole pub goes, "Mill," So he tells us his story, and we're saying we're sort of doubting it a little bit. We're thinking it's a bit of an urban legend, or it's. But he insisted it's true. And a couple of years later, we play Man City away in the First Division, and he drives us up there. And we get up there quite early. We get parked up, and pay the local kids a couple of quid to look after the car, or whatever. And there used to be a pub near City's Old Ground main road called the Princess, and
next to the coach station.
No, it's further before you get into Manchester City Centre. You just come off the motorway, right. And it was a massive old pub. Apparently, away fans would gather in there because it was right near the away end part of Main Road. Anyway, we go in, we have a pint, and there's only about 20 or 30 people in there, and we get talking to him about this story at Leeds again, and he swears blind it's true. And his theory is that there are Millwall fans in every pub and every away game. So he says, right, if you don't believe, he goes to the bar to get another round of drinks, orders drinks, turns around, holds his arms up and goes, "Mill!" And there's total tumbleweed, not a thing. And these old boys in the pub don't even look up from their pints, and he just comes walking back. So we doubted it even more after that. Even to this day, I spoke to him a few years ago, he insists it happened, but that to me, the look on his face when he gave this big Mill, and that was priceless. That's one of the funniest things I remember from travelling away and stuff.
If you're a Leeds fan and you're in that pub on that day, get in touch with Merv and let him know that it actually...
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, because I'm sure they know about that. But yeah, if it's true, it'd be a great story if it was true. But it's the sort of thing, if you put it on Twitter, you get absolutely slaughtered. But I think people would accuse you of it not happening.
So, question 14, your favourite current player?
Yeah, I think it has to be Jed Wallace, really, doesn't it? I just think he sort of epitomises everything that the Millwall fans have always liked. I mean, I know we've always liked the tough players, the likes of Kitchener and Cripps and Erlock and that sort of thing. But Millwall fans also like their football, and they like players to be skillful and be a bit maverick, And I think Jed Wallace has got all those traits. I think he understands the club, and some of the things he says on Twitter, and little things like I think someone had a pop at him on Twitter a couple of years ago. I think it might have been. I can't remember, they accused him of being too flat.
Yeah, I remember now when he wasn't passionate or something, wasn't he? And he come back and...
But he was dead apologetic about it. I think someone accused him of trying to overcomplicate something. He was trying to do a step over or a back heel, and all he needed to do was... And he came in and explained it, and he was dead honest about it. And I thought, he didn't need to do that. He was like explaining it as if he was explaining it to his manager. And that's, I think, the sort of respect he's got for the fans, which is really, really rare. And, he's obviously been at the club a while, and he just, it's such a cliche, but he just gives absolutely everything all the time, even when, he's a sort of player when we're 2 or 3 down, he'll still be running his guts out, and that's, I think, it's all you want, really.
It was interesting as well, because he still carried on after Savile went. You would have thought that it was sort of like a partner in crime sort of disappeared, and then, it didn't, but, I suppose. So, question 15, we're kicking through nice and thingy, and then we'll do a bit about the book in a bit anyway. So, question 15, your best away day following Millwall?
Yeah, obviously.
What you can remember?
Yeah, but obviously, Hull aside, I think Tranmere in the FA Cup. That's a memorable one. That was massive. Because I'm always a bit pessimistic. I thought we'd blown the chance drawing at home with them, missing the penalty, and they're always a tough team on there. So I managed to get tickets to go to that one. We went and we just played so well, and it was. And I remember that night. In the last few minutes, it was 2-1, and it was all getting a bit nervy. I decided to go down to the toilets in the concourse, and I went down there, and it's just packed full of Millwall fans pacing up and down. And Richard Sadley was stood down there as well. He was there that night. But yeah, I mean, to get to an FA Cup semi-final, and of course into Europe with that win was amazing. Bournemouth away on the promotion season as well. That was a midweek game. We took so many there. I think the videos on YouTube. And the scenes of the away end behind Brian Owen's goal. And we went 2-0 up. We were really cruising. Hurlock got a cracker. And then Bournemouth come back and they got a penalty in the last minute down at our end, and we thought we'd blown it. And then Horn pulls off this save. And the scenes after that were really good. And you sort of felt we was up then, really. But yeah, again, it's one of them, you think of it, a different one every time, really. Every time someone asks you, think of a different memorable away game, but that for me, those sort of stick in my mind most.
I mean, the next question, I suppose, really sort of ties in 16, 17, sort of tying together to a degree. I mean, what's your most disliked opponent ever? And obviously, what do you class as Millwall's top 3 rival?
Right, yeah. So my most disliked, I think the dislike one with Millwall is quite divided, because obviously a lot of Millwall fans hate West Ham and some hate Palace. I think it depends where you're brought up. So I say we moved out to sort of South Norwood, sort of Palace territory, really. So I was at school with Palace fans, and I'd say some of my best mates were Palace fans as well. But just it was always Palace, and I think for me, I think a rival has to be someone you're playing quite often as well, really. And during the 80s, during that time when I was at school, we weren't playing West Ham at all, with the exception of that Simod Cup game in '87. Yeah. So I think it was harder. Yeah, it was harder to treat them as a rival and to sort of have any hatred for them if you weren't playing them. Yeah. And you couldn't sort of generate that bad blood, And we had a real sort of topsy-turvy time with Palace in the 80s. I mean, we knocked them out of the cup in '85, I think it was, when we were in the third and they were in the second. And then when we went up, they beat us at their place after we sort of gone ahead, and we beat them at our place. And then the draw in the promotion season at our place when we were robbed in the last minute, that Jim Cannon goal, stuff like that. And of course all the stuff, all the sticks you get at school and stuff like that. When they all come out of the woodwork when they beat you and that sort of thing. That sort of definitely builds that hatred up for Palace, definitely. But yeah, after the fan base as well, I just find it just a bit embarrassing,
Crying the crow.
Yeah. Something like I say, that Malcolm Allison period at Palace in the mid '70s when they had all that the good youth team and that, but they went through a whole rebranding, and the fans were quite happy with them to totally change the kit, change the nickname of the club. They changed it from the Glazers to the Eagles. They all went along with it, which it's sort of, I find that really weird. It's obviously you'd never get away with it at Millwall. I mean, Theo tried it, didn't he? And he got quite far. He probably got further than most, but he brought back. He was very clever with it. He brought back the all-white kit, which a lot of fans were keen to see. He changed the badge, but at the same time as Allison at Palace was making those changes, Gordon Jago was trying to do something similar at Millwall, and they were having none of it, quite rightly. I think he wanted to change Coldblow Lane to Montego Bay Boulevard or something ridiculous like that. He wanted to soften the whole, make it all more user-friendly and family-friendly, and that just wasn't Millwall. So
they've all tried the same thing over the years to make Millwall more of a commercial entity, and it doesn't work.
No.
It's pretty much, we would be happy if we went down there on a Saturday and sat on hay bales and watched the team.
Yeah.
As long as we can get, I mean, the things what should change never do, and the things what shouldn't change, they always do.
Yeah.
Kids area.
Yeah.
Kids area to me should be lower tier. because that way the kids can always get the autographs and stuff like that. I think the fact that it'd be nice if you can get a beer during half time without missing most of the second half would be great. Getting a hot, decent pie or a hot, decent sausage roll, etc. But I think,
standard stuff, really, isn't it?
But none of that changes. But they change other stuff. You know, they make, and a lot of it's probably through the FA. The FA sort of, you know, money. Unfortunately, money's in football now, and money talks, advertising, etc., etc. Be interesting to see where it goes after all of this, because once the coronavirus stuff goes, I mean, you only need to look online and stuff, and advertising has basically taken a drop. Advertising fees have just dropped out. And it'll be interesting to see where that goes going forward. Our company's going to want to pay, you know, 50, 100 million pound a year for sponsoring football matches. After all of this, or will they even have the money? So, I don't know. So what's your top three rivals then? Palace obviously at the top.
Yeah, I put Palace at the top. It's probably a bit of a controversial on this, but again, it's because of the point of I think playing someone regularly and having a bit of, you know, a bit more incident with them makes them more of a rival sometimes. I mean, a good example of this is in the old promotion years, early 2000s under Mark McGee. Wigan became a big rival. You know, we bloody hated them. You know, and it's not like the Palace Brighton thing. Well, I suppose it is in a way, because there was the Palace Brighton thing came about through bad blood between Malcolm Allison and Alan Mullery. But that was personalities thing. But actual on the pitch stuff, it's all started with Wigan beating us in the Autoglass or the Windscreen Shield final in '99. We thought that was a gimme. We went there and we thought, oh, we'll murder them. We've got 50,000 fans here. They got 5. We've already beaten them, I think, home and away in the league. And of course, they stiffed us with that handball goal at the end. And that started it all off. And suddenly they were a promotion rival. And they beat us in the playoffs. And suddenly it's become one of the games you're looking for, which is bizarre, you know. So I think in that respect, I think I'd have to put Leeds up there. But it's become quite hilarious, the sort of the way Leeds fans totally deny that they give a monkeys about us, and they clearly do, because it doesn't take them long. Yeah, and
Sir Robert Leeds, or Robert Leeds, whatever his name is, the one on Twitter, or used to be. He's blocked most of us now.
Right. Yeah.
He comes out with everything. I mean, anything we do, they hate. You know, they can do whatever they want, but as soon as we do anything, they hate it.
And they keep throwing the family club of the year thing in their faces, like they've come up with, like they've got some real big put down, like they've uncovered something really sort of real sort of revelation. But I mean, it's a cliche that I hate, to be honest, on Twitter at the moment. But it is true for Millwall Leeds, and that is, well, living rent free in their heads, definitely, because they've got this little obsession about us. And you honestly believe when they beat us at their place this season and last season, after we sort of have been ahead, I think that's one of their. I think that was one of their biggest wins of the season was to come from behind and beat us. Given that we always seem to beat them halfway, I think it really bugs them. That's the thing.
I think it's. I mean, I think when we had the regen battle, what that showed was we were pretty much most people's guilty secret. You know what I mean? That we're most people's guilty pleasure. Everybody hates us, but actually everybody would love to support us, or everybody loves Millwall. They don't necessarily publicly do, but definitely what that showed was behind the doors, most people actually wouldn't want to be without us. Yeah. There's
definitely sort of an envy of it as well. I mean, I remember even, this is going back to some school days when a few Palace fans would actually admit that, you know, there was something just really good about Millwall's following, about how they had their own songs. Like Palace could just take on the latest song and just change the words to suit Palace, and we do now. But Millwall's always had its own identity, and I think so many football clubs, even ones with strong identities, like such as Leeds, have given in to, have sold out really, just because of the sort of the Premier League and that sort of thing. And I think they envy the fact, and people will say as much on Twitter, they envy the fact that Millwall haven't done that and don't look like doing it anytime soon, which is good.
No, I agree. So if you could change anything, what would you change?
About Millwall itself?
Yeah.
Or, I'm wary of changing anything about.
Yeah, I mean, is there one result that you'd want to change, or is it?
Oh, right.
If you could change anything, what would you change?
Oh God, yeah. So I read this question. I must admit, I read this question. Yeah, I've got to admit. Yes, I do know. I wish we could change the result of that Birmingham playoff semi-final 2002. Because that team.
That was the one where the crowd
team was. It all went. Yeah, but that team. I mean, when you look at that team we had under McGee that had won the league the year before, and the players, and you look at some of the footage of that season, and we absolutely destroyed teams. It was so good, and yet again, typical of Mill, we were so unlucky with injuries. We had at the crucial running of the season. I think Tim Cahill got injured for a few games. Sadlier was injured. Obviously, we were without Harris because of his illness. I think if we'd have had that season of a fully fit Harris, Cahill, Sadlier, I mean, Dion Dublin come in and did a good job, don't get me wrong, but I think we'd have been in a position to bring Dublin in anyway to strengthen the team like we did with Claridge the year before. Without injuries, that team would have won that league over Man City.
You're on about the present day, the fairly modern. You're on about the Birmingham game, the playoff final, the
playoff semi-final. 2000, yeah, 2002. Yeah, that's it. The one that ended up with the riot. Yeah, which again, it was. I remember. I think I was doing some work with the supporters club at the time. A fella. What's his name? Can't remember his name now. Steve Frangu, I think his name was. He was a really nice guy. And at the time, Theo was very close to the supporters club, and he would chat to them. And he said when Theo was summoned to that meeting with the police commissioner, the Met Police guy, and he absolutely tore him off the strip. He said he'd never been so scared in his life, and Theo was no sort of slouch. And I think that the club really suffered from that. And yet, the fact that the club were getting blamed for people outside from the local estates lobbing stuff to the police, it had nothing really to do with the club. It's just was sort of typical. But again, I think it was a bit of a 1972 moment. We got that close to getting in the Premier League. So I think we'd have won the final, but we shouldn't have even been. We should have won the league that year without a doubt. So yeah, I think I'd love to change that and not have that bloody last minute Stern John goal go in, and maybe have had. I think Dublin had a really good chance in that game. And to have won that and gone to the final and got in the Premier League, and who knows where we'd have gone from there. I mean, I'm not that desperate to get in the Premier League, but I just think that team was so good. The likes of Sadlier and Harris and Cahill and Reid and Eiffel deserve to play on the best stage with Millwall, to be honest.
No, I agree with you. I think it would have been good just to see whether or not, I mean, the Premiership as a whole, even now, I'd love to go out there for one season. Just to have some good days and some good home days. Take the money, but I think it would absolutely suffocate Millwall to an inch of its life. The Premier League.
I mean, I can remember even in the old First Division, standing on the halfway line, and there'd be arguments breaking out about, where were you? Where were you in like the last? Where were you when we were losing out to Chesterfield and that? And people, because obviously we were averaging like 15, 16,000 after years of averaging 2 or 3, 4 or 5,000.
Yeah.
And it didn't sit well with a lot of the fans. And we used to laugh about it and think, I think we were happier when we were in the third division. And I talked to, I know a few sort of Man City fans who actually aren't enjoying all their success, would you believe? And said that actually were happier when they were, when they were getting beat and being crap because they had a ground that they liked. They're in a similar position. They moved away from a ground that they were very fond of, and they said it's all just too different now.
Moss Side was the first council estate in England to fit bulletproof and fireproof doors.
No, I'm not surprised. Yeah.
I mean, Main Road back in the day was a dangerous place. I mean, it was a dangerous place to be. But I suppose football changed and everything else. So, question 19, all-time favourite shirt?
Yeah, it's the 88-89 Lewisham home shirt, I think. The first one in the First Division. I remember buying that and being really impressed with the little moniker over the badge to say, the First Division. I thought it was a nice touch there, unusually nice touch for Mill to put that on. And I was really impressed with that. And it just evoked so many memories, that those faded diagonal stripes and that Lewisham logo, and it just reminds you of like some really great days, and like beating Everton at home and going 1-0 up at Liverpool in front of the Kop and that sort of thing. It was properly iconic shirt, definitely.
Have you still got one, or?
I did have. Funnily enough, I don't know if you saw the post on Twitter the other day. Some woman said her son had collected all these collection of Millwall shirts and she laid them all out on the floor. And there was like 30 years of Millwall shirts, and it was brilliant. And I thought, I wish I'd kept mine, but we got to a stage where mine was taking up my whole wardrobe, and it was it was getting a bit ridiculous. So I ended up flogging them off on bloody eBay. Would you believe? I think I got about 90 quid for that 89. It certainly didn't fit me anymore, that's for sure. But yeah, I really regret it now. I wish I'd kept them, but I don't know where I'd have put them.
No, that's it, isn't it? That's it. So, last question, and then we'll do a bit on the books. I'm going to set a question for the what do you call it, so that people have to watch. What's your best piece of Millwall memorabilia you own?
Yeah, it's not a single piece, to be honest, but it's my programmes, I think. I've got pretty much every programme from the games I went to, and then my dad started sending them up to me as well when the games he went to, and I've got them just all on shelves behind me here, on about 3 shelves, and it's just great to look back on. Obviously, it's been really handy for me to research my books, but they're just quite fascinating when you go back and you look at a season and you flick through them, and it sort of takes you right back. Even the silly little things like the adverts in them and just the way they're sort of laid out. It's just it takes you right back. You can actually remember yourself back in that particular season, buying that program, reading that program. I know they're not as popular anymore, but yeah, and I think that it's a great thing to have to look back on. And I quite enjoy sometimes flipping through a few, and you'll see sometimes a funny article, or you'll see like a player who was in the youth team at the time, a funny photo. I think I put one of Alan Dunn when he signed as a 14-year-old apprentice the other day. I'll sort of scan it in, I'll whack it on Twitter, and it's quite a laugh to sort of share that with people, So that's definitely my favourite sort of. Yeah,
I like obviously the Millwall Museum is quite active. They're currently looking to raise some money to get some bits and pieces going and get finalised to move forward. I mean, I when I was found on the board, I helped as much, and now it looks as if they've got a community centre and they're going to be doing stuff in there and whatnot. But they've got loads and loads of the old "No One Likes Us" fanzine and Raw and some other fans, and you read back through some of them, and they are really, really well written pieces. There's some real funny bits.
Good, from day one.
But unfortunately, I think the internet's killed it all now. I don't think you can get the fans used to. You still get Lions Raw with Aisha. But I think, I think it's hard to get people to write stuff. It's hard to, gone are the days of, people wanting to sell them now. It's that standing around on the corner trying to sell stuff, which is hard work.
Yeah.
So we're doing this. Who are you? This special Who Are You with you? Obviously to plug your book. And you've obviously got a couple of others. We know that you're working on another one to go forward, which obviously details will going out. But The Ordinary Boys, was that just a natural follow-on from what you wrote before with the? Because you wrote 4, didn't you? You wrote the 3 even. You wrote because my dad did, and then obviously you've done the one after. I've got all of them somewhere, but
Yeah, well, what it was, because my dad does, I suppose you could call it semi-autobiographical, I suppose, because it talked about the promotion season, but it was also about me and my dad. What it was, I don't know if there was a brilliant history of the club done by a fellow called James Murray, called the Lions of the South.
I've got it right
over there
next to my bed.
Yeah, that was, and it must be one of the most comprehensive, detailed club histories ever, because, it's brilliant. It's such a good book. Unfortunately, it ended at the start of the 87-88 season. Obviously, it had to finish it somewhere. And so it sort of finished as they were getting ready for that season when they got promotion to the First Division. And it was brought out just before they got promotion. And I thought it was a shame he never followed it up. But I think James Murray is now a whiskey expert.
Yeah.
he publishes something called the Whiskey Bible.
Okay.
Yeah. So I sort of thought, well, there's a pretty big hole in Millwall's history now. You've got obviously that season they went up, and you've got the seasons they were in the first division, and after that. So obviously, my second book was A Natural High. That was the 2 seasons we spent in the top flight. Yeah. And I was going to go from there. I was going to go, and I still intend to go on from there and cover the 90s and that sort of thing. But I got chatting to Phil Coleman on Facebook just on the off chance one day, and I was really impressed by his sort of depth of knowledge and his passion for that sort of time. And that got me thinking, you know, it's a story that every Millwall fan knows about. I think most Millwall fans know they won the Youth Cup. And I thought, but I wonder if they understood how, what an achievement it was. You know, when you look into it and you research it a bit, it was a massive, massive achievement, you know. So it got me sort of researching it. And I thought there was quite a big story to tell, not least because of the state the club was in at the time as well. It was in a lot of financial trouble. And had lots of, you know, there was big trouble on the pitch, on the terraces, and there was some hooligan trouble, which was probably partly stoked up by the Panorama programme. Yeah, which again was which was pivotal in the club's history as well. And suddenly there was like a real big story there, I thought, that to be told. So I sort of met up with Phil, and I spent about 4 hours chatting to Phil and going through all these scrapbooks and stuff like that. And he's still in touch with the players, and I spoke to a few of them, and they had some good stories. And it went from there really, and that's how that came about. And I thought it was, like I say, such a good achievement, because I think at the time, I think Millwall was only the 4th team from outside the top flight to win it or to get to the final. And there's not been many since. I think Millwall was still the only team to get to 2 different finals in different eras from outside the first division. I think Palace did it twice in a row with the same team. So Millwall, the only team to sort of win it twice with different squads, you know, different times. But when you look at it, when you look at how hard it was to win that tournament, even though it is a youth team tournament, it was a massive achievement. And a lot of these clubs, like Palace, had loads of money thrown at them at that time. And other teams that won it, that was a big part of their club's investment was in the youth team. It wasn't a Millwall, it was all like typically improvised. I mean, the coach who was instrumental in it was a guy called Oscar Arthur, Argentinian coach, who was a bit of a Pep Guardiola, to be fair. And every player mentioned him, said he was so ahead of his time. He was all about technical skills and passing, that sort of thing. I mean, he cobbled together for training, he cobbled together like a fake wall out of some old timber, and he ripped the wheels off the bloody wheelie bins, or the Paladin metal bins, to use as a rollable sort of wall, so they can practice bending it around the wall, that sort of thing, you know. And it was just unheard of. And they said he was all about, you know, the ball at your feet and that sort of thing. And he had a big influence on them. And unfortunately, he left when Jago went after the Panorama business. But it's all little fascinating stories like that, you know, that came out of it.
We're going to go into some more of those stories on another interview we're going to do.
Yeah.
We're going to pick up with. I suppose it's quite a sad thing. I mean, it was quite a weird story. I met Tony for a friend of mine. I've met Tony before, a while back, but I met Tony for a friend of mine who said, look, you know, I remember you were talking about looking to do something with Alzheimer's. And there's something what I've been looking into for a while, and I'm talking to a few people, and we're looking to put something together where I've read a lot on Alzheimer's. Football and Alzheimer's has a real connection, that a lot of people with Alzheimer's can use football to gain memories from past. And it was something what we were going to do with Tony, because obviously his dad was really ill, suffering on early insets of Alzheimer's, but he was in America. So what we were going to do was look at fans to try and get fans to give us stories of games back in the day. And then we were going to collate them into an email and then basically send them to his dad, and then the nurse or his mum, or, you know, his dad's wife, etc., can read the stories and watch him, or he can read them to him on FaceTime and go through there. And then all of a sudden, your book mentioned him, Ted Lynch. And then
that's right.
Tony was made up, and Tony's like, oh, you know, I'm in this book, blah, blah. And I said, well, I know the fella who's that book is. And then obviously I introduced you to him. And then the stories come. So hopefully going forward, we'll have a bit more of that, because obviously there were the stories what you've done, and then obviously he can come back with some stories from around there, because it's in your book. I mean, the full details obviously about Ted are in the book, with the connection with a couple of players. So I mean, I think what you did there when you sent the book to him and whatnot was a lovely gesture. And I think, unfortunately, now, rest his soul, Ted sadly passed away. But I think that gave Tony a bit of light, a bit of pleasure that he was able to tell his dad that he actually appeared in a book before he passed.
Yeah, that was nice, because I guess I tried to track him down, because like I say, it was one of the last interviews I did right near when the book was due to come out, and I did spend a bit of time trying to track him down, the Lynch's down, but I didn't have any success, unfortunately. It must have been just before you got chatting to him, but yeah, it was really nice to know that Ted did get to sort of see that. But again, yeah, their story is just so typical of the sort of characters of the stories of the time, really.
Well, while you were talking, I managed to. I've got two books. I've got one by the great Chris Bethel and Dave Sullivan, the 50 Millwall matches, or 50 of the finest matches at Millwall. And
that's the one. Yeah, it's a cracker.
If you're a Millwall fan and haven't got that book, it's not cheap.
No.
I think it goes on eBay 30, 40, 50, 60 quid upwards, because I don't think they make it anymore.
No.
But yeah, Lions of the South by James Murray is probably a must for any Millwall fan, for a background on history, really about it. Ordinary Boys, how can people get it? I will put all the available links will be, if you're listening to this on podcast, then it will be in the description. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you click in the description below, you will have all the links. But those of you who actually write it down, I mean, Merv, where can people get hold of this? And
at the moment, because of the situation at the moment, you're better off going to Amazon. It's on Amazon. It's taking a bit of time to deliver the paperback. It's, things are a bit slower again at the moment. Whereas before it's like 1 or 2 days. Now it's like a week or 10 days. You can get it on Kindle as well, so that's like straight away. And usually you can get like it from ordinaryboys.co.uk if you wanted like a signed copy or something like that. But that at the moment, that's not possible at the moment because of the current situation. But yeah, Amazon's probably your best place right now.
So what I'll do is, the question for this book, and we'll pick the winner at random. The question for this book is obviously Ordinary Boys, the class of 79. What did this team win? What did this team win? Details of how to enter will be in the description. We'll put an email address there, and just send an email in with the answer in the subject bar. And we'll do that with a closing day and full details. But this is a signed book, what Merv's kindly donated. So again, I don't want to do it too much, but it's a signed book from Merv. It's a great read. I'm about halfway through, and it's quite addictive because you start reading it. I've read it when they received, and I've got about 30 pages in, and then you're thinking, I need to get back at that, and I need to get back at that, and I think that's the same with a lot of your books. They're very easy to read and come back to. Homeschooling, unfortunately, takes over a lot of mine, but my kids need to read. I might start my Millwall history books and stuff.
I mean, that's one thing I'm sort of very passionate about, to be honest. But I purposely wanted to make my books sort of a bit shorter than your average sort of book in a way. A lot of people have said, I finished it in a couple of days, or because I think it's not saying it's gone out of fashion, but not as many people read anymore, again, because of the internet and stuff like that. So I think if it's something you feel like you can get through pretty quickly, it's just short and snappy, I think it's more enjoyable, because that was really what I aimed to do, sort of make them a lot more user friendly. And that's what I try and do, really.
Did you write the book for it to go out and go public? I mean, I know that sounds a stupid question, but did you make it so other people wanted to read it, or did you just write it that you wanted to put it in print for yourself and hope that people would enjoy it too?
Was that the first one?
Well, yeah, I mean, all of them to a degree. I mean, they're very straightforward written, and they're very easy to read. I'm not a great reader. I mean, I read Kindle a bit, but I'm not a great reader. I prefer reading on online and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I try to make them as sort of straightforward as possible. But yeah, I hoped that people could relate to them, and I don't anticipate any of them sort of being bestsellers. But if a handful of Millwall fans read them and enjoy them and tell me they've enjoyed them and want me to keep doing them, then I'm happy to do so. It is. I really enjoy doing it. It's really rewarding to sort of like when you sort of see that finished thing and then people are buying it and then telling you they enjoy it. It's really rewarding. It's nice.
So all 3 books are available from your website or from Amazon.
Amazon probably best at the moment. Yeah.
So before we end, do you have any final thoughts? Any words of wisdom you'd like to share with? Well, you could give them the vehicle reg of the car that crashed into you if you want.
Yeah.
Hunt him down.
Don't think I'll see that again. No, not really. Words of wisdom for Millwall fans. Is there anything
that you need help wise with future book or anything? Do you want any?
I'm always on the lookout. Yeah, I mean, I'm starting to cover the 90s. I always like fan stories, and I tried to get a few in for the second one, Natural High, and I think people were a little bit reluctant to come forward with them. But I did get a few nice ones. So yeah, I mean, if anyone's got any funny stories from those sort of time from the 90s, that would be good, definitely. So they can sort of get in touch via Twitter or something like that. But yeah, I always like to have that sort of side to it rather than just telling people what happened. I like to sort of get the sort of other fans' angles as well.
Excellent. Well, look, we are doing a couple of shows around Merv's book. We've done, obviously, Who Are You? We've got a Nicky Chatterton interview coming out, obviously, from a player from that era. And we have got an interview coming out with Merv, myself, and Tony Lynch, Ted Lynch's son, going, obviously, how they got in with the Millwall Times of the team of 79. Thank you very much for your time today, Merv.
No problem.
I do appreciate it, and no doubt we will speak soon. So thank you very much, and that's it from us. If you enjoyed the show, then please do subscribe or give us a like. If you're following us on the podcast, then please remember to make a comment. We do read your comments. We are keen on those. And if you are following us on YouTube, you can make a comment. And please do make sure you subscribe and tick the bell so that you get all future publications from us straight to your inbox. Again, thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for watching, and we'll speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Introducing touch-free payments from PayPal, a safe way for your customers to pay. Simply download the PayPal app and display your own unique QR code for your customers to scan. Whether you're a market seller,
I'll take 2 tomatoes and a cucumber,
poodle pamperer, piano tuner, or plumber, signing up to accept touch-free payments for your business is easy. Touch-free QR code payments. No seller fees until 2021. Not applicable to PayPal here transactions. Other fees may apply. Shop safe with PayPal.